What's up guys, I'm Dave Klein, aka Dave Control, and welcome back to my spoiler-filled Elden Ring lore series. Today, we'll talk about a fierce warrior represented by the Red Lion, whose power could stop the very stars. Today, we discuss Starscourge Radahn and the Redmane warriors. Radahn was born of two separate houses. His mother was Rennala of Carian royalty and the master of the Academy of Rhea Lucaria, giving him an association with intelligence and sorcery. Meanwhile, his father was Radagon, who was a champion of the Erdtree and the Golden Order with an association to incantations and faith. Radagon had flowing red hair that Radahn would inherit. Every giant is red of hair, and Radagon was said to have despised his own red locks. Perhaps that was a curse of their kind. However, while Radagon seemed to compare this to the giants, who fought against the Golden Order and Erdtree, and therefore saw it as a negative, Radahn viewed this as a positive thing. Radahn inherited the furious, flaming red hair of his father Radagon and is fond of its heroic implications. I was born a champion's cub, now I am the lord of the battlefield's lion. While Radagon compared his hair to that of the giants, it would seem Radahn specifically compared his to a lion, with lions having a stronger association with Marika's former husband, Godfrey the First Elden Lord. Godfrey was a ferocious warrior. When he vowed to become a lord, he took the beast regent Sarash upon his back to suppress the ceaseless lust for battle that raged within. In fact, Radahn even went as far as to design his armor to represent Godfrey. The Golden Lion is said to symbolize Godfrey, the Elden Lord, and his beast regent Sarash. From his youngest years, Radahn was naturally captivated by the Lord of the Battlefield. After all, if Radahn loved warfare and battle, Godfrey was truly the best, and someone to idolize. He was known as the Lord of the Battlefield, and his soldiers were never known to have lost a battle. Lord Godfrey, at last at the end of his campaign, his golden armies unvanquished and unbowed. Meanwhile, all we really know about Radagon, Radahn's father, in battle is that he was unable to conquer Rennala and instead took up a political alliance through marriage, which on the surface was out of love, especially on the part of Rennala, but it's unclear if for Radagon's part, this was out of love or out of politics. Barrier of Gold was used by the champions of the Erdtree in the First and Second Liurnian Wars, during which the red-haired Radagon joined the heroes' ranks. As there was a First and Second Liurnian War, to me that implies that Radagon didn't win the first of them, and therefore a political alliance might make more sense if he, again, wasn't winning the second.
He came to these lands at the head of a great golden host. When he met Lady Rennala in battle, he soon repented his territorial aggressions there, and became husband to the Carian queen.
So this could be why a young, war and battle-obsessed Radahn could be so fascinated with Godfrey specifically. After all, Godfrey was a legendary figure. Something notable that I glazed over earlier was the item description about Radagon's red hair. Every giant is red of hair, which comes from the giant's red braid item description, an item you can only acquire by trading in the Fire Giant's remembrance. So it bears the question of if Radagon is related to these giants. After all, his son Radahn is notably quite giant in stature. So if Radahn inherited his red hair from Radagon, he could have also inherited this trait, which would explain Radahn's massive size. Of course, Radagon isn't a giant, but he could be related and just skipped those genes or been a runt of the litter. At some point in Radahn's childhood or adulthood, Radagon left Rennala to marry Queen Marika.
However, when Godfrey, first Elden Lord, was hounded from the lands between, Radagon left Rennala to return to the Erdtree capital, becoming Queen Marika's second husband and king consort, taking the title of Second Elden Lord.
All of this gets more convoluted when you throw into the mixture that Radagon is Marika, including the fact Marika is a Numen. So that does throw my idea about Radahn being related to giants into question, but it's all something I definitely want to discuss in a future video. But for the purposes of this video, the main point is that because the rest of the world viewed Radahn's father as marrying Marika, that meant Radahn now had the status of stepchild or step-demigod. Radahn was amongst the children of Rennala and Radagon, who became demigod stepchildren after Radagon's union with Queen Marika. As Radahn was born to Rennala, it stands to reason that he probably grew up in Caria Manor. Caria and Rennala, who specifically are known for their association with the moon, and not necessarily the stars. And as he was a son of a sorcery-involved family, he eventually left to study in Sellia, town of sorcery located in Caelid. Here he studied gravity magic under the Alabaster Lords. The Red Lion General wielded gravitational powers which he learned in Sellia during his younger days. Also, he would never have to abandon his beloved but scrawny steed. Thanks to Zuli the Witch, who was able to dig into the NPC AI scripts of Elden Ring, Zuli was able to discover this beloved steed of Radahn's is named Leonard. So Radahn, being a man of action, devoted himself to studying gravitational magic, at least in his youth, so he could ride Leonard despite how massive he himself was. The Alabaster Lords who Radahn studied under were one of the magic-wielding races who had arrived in the lands between via the stars, aka some sort of celestial body, like a meteorite, striking the earth and bringing life with it. The Alabaster Lords, a race of ancients with skin of stone who were said to have risen to life when a meteor struck long ago. I find it interesting that they aren't the only celestial beings using gravitational magic, with the beings known as Astel also known for gravitational magic, as well as the falling star beasts, which draws the question of if there's a relationship between the three. Either way, clearly the Alabaster Lords were on good enough terms with Sellia to teach gravitational powers there, whereas in Caria, an Alabaster Lord can be found locked inside a royal grave Everjail. The Onyx Lords, who had skin of stone and were called Lords in reverential fear of their destructive power. Considering how terrifying these lords were considered to be, that could make it an even greater achievement that Radahn chose to study under them and came away learning plenty of gravitational spells. In particular, he learned Collapsing Stars, Gravity Well, and Rock Sling, all of which were a gravitational technique mastered by the young Radahn. I thank you for your tutelage. For now, I can challenge the stars. While Radahn had learned gravitational magic to, at least in part, be able to ride his steed, there was a further goal, one that would earn him the nickname of Starscourge. Radahn would challenge the very stars utilizing his gravitational magic and prevent more comets and meteorites with more celestial beings from falling from the sky. The mightiest hero of the demigods confronted the falling stars alone, and thus did he crush them, his conquest sealing the very fate of the stars.
General Radahn is the conqueror of the stars, who stood up to the swirling constellations, halting their movement in a smashing victory.
But long ago, General Radahn challenged the swirling constellations, and in a crushing victory arrested their cycles. Now he is the force that repulses the stars.
Radahn earned considerable renown as the Starscourge in his youth, and is said that it was during this time he engraved the gravity crest upon these blades. An interesting thing to question is why Radahn challenged the stars. We know for certain a couple things. For one, objects from outer space, like comets, carry with it all kinds of celestial beings and otherworldly consequences. Astel, who destroyed the Eternal City, came from the stars. The Alabaster Lords, Falling Star Beasts, and probably even Crystallians came from the stars. Even the Elden Beast, which set in motion the Erdtree and Golden Order, came from the stars. It is said that long ago, the Greater Will sent a golden star bearing a beast into the lands between, which would later become the Elden Ring. For two, by stopping the cycle of the stars, Radahn has prevented Ranni from being able to complete her quest of challenging the Greater Will and Two Fingers, and has prevented her from beginning an Age of Stars.
So Ranni's fate is kept in stasis by Starscourge Radahn.
So that leaves a few possibilities in my mind. It could be as simple as Starscourge Radahn, who so greatly admired Godfrey and all of his victories, challenged the stars as a means to take on an even greater foe and show how mighty he was. It could be that, as he was born of Radagon, he might hold some alliance to the Erdtree and is preventing Lovecraftian-esque beings sent from competing otherworldly gods from arriving to the lands between, so the Greater Will can continue to reign. Or perhaps he knows the stars are tied to Ranni's fate and is trying to prevent an Age of Stars and Ranni from taking over.
If General Radahn were to die, the stars would resume their movement.
That said, he does have a moon dial at Redmane Castle, which I take to be a symbol of sorcerers and those interested in astrology, so I find it unlikely. Plus there's the fact that he became Starscourge in his youth, likely before Ranni had Godwyn killed, so it could be as simple as this was an unintended consequence. I'm honestly not sure which of these it could be, and I'd love to hear your theories in the comments. Personally, I'm leaning towards the first of these, that Radahn simply wanted to challenge a great foe, and viewed the stars as the greatest foe, but I could be wrong here. At some point within this timeline, Radahn, who is studying in Sellia, took control of Redmane Castle to the south while establishing Fort Gale in the north. Now, it could very well be that this castle was simply gifted to him as he was a high-ranking noble born of Radagon and Rennala. Sellia sends his sorcerers to the Academy of Raya Lucaria, so the son of the Master of the Academy and Queen of the Carian line would be a big deal. Meanwhile, Radagon was known as a warrior of the Golden Order, secretly Marika, and we see that the worship of Marika has spread into Caelid via the Church of the Plague right next to Sellia and its graveyard, where a statue of Marika was erected, indicating the Golden Order religion had spread here. From Redmane Knight Ogha's ashes, we learn that Ogha was the longest-serving member of the Redmane Knights. Ogha studied techniques to manipulate gravity alongside Radahn. Not only does that tell us that Radahn took classes under the tutelage of the Alabaster Lords alongside others, such as Ogha, but it makes it sound like the Redmane Knights were actually established prior to Radahn coming to Caelid and Sellia to study. Before gaining renown as the Starscourge, Radahn was simply known as General Radahn and led the Redmane Knights. He gained this title before even venturing into Caelid from Caria, as Caria is likely where he befriended Jaren. Jaren preferred a nomadic existence, but after spending time as a guest of the Carian royals, he became a guest commander for General Radahn, and for the first time, the restless tumbleweed would be bound by honorable oath. General Radahn's army was fashioned after how he viewed himself, a red-maned lion warrior similar to Godfrey. His soldiers' surcoats depicted a red-maned lion raising a sword in the image of Radahn. Thus, they were Redmanes, and all proved they were worthy of the name. Meanwhile, their helmet's visor was fashioned after a lion's fangs. His knight's armor indicates that he was indeed proud to be Radagon's son, and a warrior associated with the elite Golden Order. The red plume is a symbol of Radahn's pedigree as Lord Radagon's son, the mane of the proud red lion, and their red mane great shields bore his crest. Great shield shaped like a fang, featuring the crest of a red maned lion. Radahn also had armorers who served under him, with these armorers' cookbooks typically including recipes for various items associated with fire. It contains knowledge of dealings with decay, the application of fire in particular. It is interesting that they would use fire, which was so anti-Erdtree, but that will become extremely important later on. Similar to his hero Godfrey and the Golden Lineage, Radahn wanted lions of his own Sirashes. So once he established himself at Redmane Castle, he kept 2 lions within. Meanwhile, once he established Fort Gale, he also kept a lion there to protect it. The symbolism in Redmane Castle isn't only that of the Golden Order though. Similar to how Caria has a moon-gazing grounds with an extreme association to sorcery and magic, Redmane Castle has a very similar moon-gazing grounds with chairs all around what, to me, looks to be a moon dial and something we see commonly associated with astrology. After taking over Caelid and taking on the stars, one of the greatest battles of all was about to take place. The Shattering. This sparked an all-out war between the various demigods of Elden Ring, and it seems like it was here Radahn suffered a major defeat and major blow. While Radahn vied for power and even obtained a great rune of his own, in the intro cutscene, we can see a battle between Morgott and Radahn, with Morgott stabbing through Radahn, making it seem, to me, that Radahn actually fought Morgott for control over Leyndell and lost, which would lead to him retreating back to Caelid. Before I go on, I've seen a debate that this character from the image isn't Radahn, and that the proportions aren't correct, that there are no item descriptions that speak of this defeat. Those are all good points, so I decided to take images of Radahn's armor as well as a similar shot of Radahn with his head down and combine them to create a side-by-side next to this image from the intro. To me, it looks like the same armor set. While there are some minor differences, personally I attribute that to it being a different artist or his scale armor getting a torn on one arm, but not the other. But hey, I could be mistaken, so I wanted to present the counterpoint, especially since Radahn, as far as we know, should be much larger here. For more in-depth discussion on this, I recommend checking out Smotown's video, Elden Ring Lore Did Margit Defeat Radahn? It's a really great look into this. Around this point, Godric hid himself away in Stormveil Castle to avoid any confrontation with Radahn.
Honestly, Godric's nothing more than a jumped-up country bumpkin. Lord? Oh, don't make me laugh. First, he hid himself amongst the womenfolk to flee the capital, then hid from Radahn in that castle.
It was then that another one of the great demigods decided to march down from the mountaintops of the giants with her warriors and take on Radahn, who could have been her greatest threat, Malenia. Malenia took her army of clean-rot knights with her and marched south past Liurnia through Limgrave, where she stomped on Godric, and into Caelid for what would become one of the greatest battles of the Shattering. Here, her soldiers would have to face off against General Radahn's soldiers, who were all reputed to be masterful warriors, and it was popularly said that the Redmanes knew no weaknesses. Radahn himself was such a fierce warrior that what are known as Radahn spears, arrows he would eventually use for his lion great bow, which was imbued with gravitational powers of the Starscourge. When used along with Radahn's spear, it becomes a true weapon of a champion, weren't just given the name due to their size, but were actual spears used against him in battle. These are in fact the many spears with which he was stabbed by the clean-rot knights.
He who was once called the strongest of all the demigods.
Through all of this fighting, he even managed to continue to still hold back the stars and prevent their cycle from ever completing. But the true clash was about to begin. Radahn versus Malenia.
The conqueror of the stars, General Radahn. And the blade of Miquella and Malenia the Seventh. These two were the mightiest to remain, and locked horns in combat. But there would be no victor.
Radahn was such a fierce competitor that it seems in her exchange with Radahn, Malenia resorted to stabbing herself, unleashing the Scarlet Rot she'd been holding back in order to win the battle, which resulted in a stalemate. The Battle of Ionia, Radahn and Malenia locked in stalemate, then the Scarlet Rot blooms. While Malenia's Scarlet Rot stopped Radahn in his tracks and allowed one of her soldiers to carry her back to the Halig Tree and away from battle, it would have severe repercussions on Radahn and Caelid as a whole. Caelid, known as the locale of the last battle between General Radahn and Malenia, Blade of Miquella, is a vast land constantly marred by Scarlet Rot. The Scarlet Rot was a contagious disease that tore apart the land, but the Redmane Knights found a way to try and contain it. When they were driven to defeat by Malenia's Scarlet Rot, the Redmane Knights burned the crest on the left breast of their armor to indicate their resolve. Alas, dear home, I shan't see you again, for our duty is to remain here, a bulwark against the blight. His soldiers found that fire was the solution to the problem of the Scarlet Rot.
General Radahn, the famed Red Lion and Scourge of the Stars, is a ferocious warrior. He fought Malenia and her rot to a standstill in the Caelid wilds to Limgrave's east. And now Caelid has been engulfed by the Scarlet Rot. Even approaching the region is no mean feat. I've heard survivors of Radahn's army are still in the wilds, staving off the rot with fire. And if it's true, I suspect Radahn is still there as well, in Caelid. Though, I doubt he much resembles his former self anymore.
This is where the Redmane armorer developing fire tools comes in handy. One of these is the Redmane Fire Pot, engraved with the crest of a Redmane lion. Even today, the survivors of Radahn's battalion employ fire to stave off the Scarlet Rot. These soldiers also utilize flaming bolts, used by survivors of Radahn's army to stave off the Scarlet Rot. We see evidence of this throughout Caelid. In particular, the Caelem ruins houses piles of bodies burnt to a crisp, with mechanical fire-shooting contraptions watching over them, ready to burn anything else that passes by. The jail cave, located near Fort Gale, contains prisoners who have now also been burnt to a crisp. It's unclear if these prisoners were locked away after developing Scarlet Rot, and therefore put in prison away from other people as a safety measure, just in case they had Scarlet Rot and to prevent it from spreading, which could have potentially included any number of their enemies, including Malenia's Clean-Rot Knights. But as they're all burnt to a crisp, it's hard to say. They've created burnt fortifications throughout the disease-infested Caelid, where they fight off against giant mutated and diseased beasts, burning away their remains to fight the disease until the end. Finally, Jaren and the Redmane soldiers decide to hold a festival of war for General Radahn. Convene the festival of war. Honor General Radahn with a warrior's glory. It's in your hands, Sir Jaren. While Radahn had ended the battle with Malenia in a stalemate with no true victors, he still contracted scarlet rot. But even with scarlet rot, this fierce warrior still lives on. He still internally fought against the scarlet rot, with his great rune stating, "The great rune burns to resist the encroachment of the scarlet rot."
Before we begin, allow me to paint you the full picture. General Radahn is cursed ever to wander. Eaten from the inside by Malenia's scarlet rot, his wits are long gone. Now he gathers the corpses of former friends and foes alike, gorging on them like a dog.
As it turns out, General Radahn wasn't just a great warrior and soldier, but had also earned his soldiers' respect to the highest extent. Rather than trying to snipe him out, they held a festival in his honor to give him an honorable death. Jaren served General Radahn as a guest commander, and they are said to have sworn an oath of honorable death to one another.
Champions! Welcome! The stars have aligned! The festival is nigh! General Radahn, mightiest demigod of the Shattering, awaits you!
The general was blighted by scarlet rot and driven to madness. But not long ago, he was hailed as the mightiest demigod of them all.
And Radahn's renown as a great warrior was now known all throughout the lands, with champions of all kinds choosing to partake in this festival out of respect for Radahn.
And by the by, do you know for whom this festival is being held? Well, it is none other than General Radahn himself. To think, I could face a great champion of the Shattering, a demigod in the flesh. Oh, gosh. In truth, I quiver at the thought. Such is his frightful repute.
And the amazing thing is, even going insane, even mad from scarlet rot, Radahn still managed to continue using his gravity powers to stay by his steed's side, and he still managed to continue holding back the stars, which had earned him his nickname of the Starscourge. It's only after defeating General Radahn you can witness for yourself what he was holding back.
And did you see that afterwards? A falling star right before our eyes. I can't fathom how Radahn was holding back something of that scale. He was a living legend if ever I saw one.
For defeating Radahn, you set back in motion Ranni's questline, but more importantly, you put to rest one of the most respected generals to exist in the lands between, who earned the respect of those he commanded and renown amongst the populace.
At last, the war festival has ended. Brave champion, you have our gratitude. The celebration was spectacular. General Radahn is surely pleased. Festering with rot and crippled by madness, all he wanted was an honorable death.
That wraps up this lore video on Starscourge Radahn and Caelid. I'd love to know your theories regarding Radahn's intentions on holding back the stars, and if there's anything you think I might have missed. These are always discussions, and I encourage you to watch other lore videos and come to your own conclusions. If you enjoyed this, I've already made videos on Rennala and the Academy of Rhea Lucaria, as well as Godric, so please consider checking those out. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.